The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning the world outside Sarah's cottage into a watercolor painting of grays and blues. She pressed her palm against the cold window, watching droplets race down the glass like tears she'd forgotten how to shed. At 32, she had grown comfortable with solitude, wrapping it around herself like a worn blanket. But tonight, something felt different. Tonight, silence seemed to whisper secrets she wasn't ready to hear. The knock came at exactly 9-15. Sarah single quotes teacup paused halfway to her lips. Who would venture out in weather like this? The sound came again, 3 deliberate raps that seemed to echo through her bones. She set down her cup with trembling fingers and moved toward the door, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, miss, we need help." The voice was deep, weathered by years and circumstance. Sarah's hand hovered over the deadbolt. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "Trust your heart, child, but use your head." She peered through the peephole and saw 3 figures huddled under the small porch overhang, their faces obscured by shadows and rain. "What kind of help?" she asked, her pulse quickening. "Our car broke down about a mile back. We've been walking for hours. We just need to use your phone. Maybe wait out the storm." Sarah's rational mind screamed warnings, but something in the man's voice, a vulnerability beneath the strength, made her pause. She had always been drawn to wounded things. Stray cats, broken birds, and apparently strangers in the rain. She opened the door. The first man who stepped into her light was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair plastered to his forehead, and eyes the color of storm clouds. He was perhaps 40, with the kind of face that had seen both joy and sorrow. Behind him stood a younger man with gentle features and wire-rimmed glasses, and an older gentleman with silver hair and kind eyes. That reminded her of her late father. "Thank you," the tall man said, his voice carrying genuine relief. "I'm Marcus." "This is David," he gestured to the younger man. "And Harold." The older man nodded respectfully. "Sarah," she replied, stepping back to let them in. "You're all soaked through. Let me get you some towels." As she bustled about gathering towels and making fresh tea, Sarah couldn't help but steal glances at Marcus. There was something magnetic about him, the way he moved with quiet confidence, the way his eyes seemed to hold entire conversations. When their fingers brushed as she handed him a towel, she felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with the storm outside. "You live alone?" David asked, adjusting his glasses as he looked around the cozy cottage. "Yes," Sarah replied, then immediately wondered if she should have lied. But Harold's warm smile put her at ease. "Reminds me of my late wife's place," he said softly. She had the same eye for making a house feel like home. The way he spoke about his wife, with such tender reverence, made Sarah's chest tighten. She had never known love like that. Her last relationship had ended 2 years ago when she discovered her fiancé's infidelity. Since then, she had built walls around her heart, convincing herself that solitude was safer than the risk of being broken again. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said quietly. Harold nodded, his eyes distant. 43 years we had together. Some might say that's enough. But love doesn't follow timelines, does it? Marcus caught Sarah's eye across the room, and she saw her own longing reflected there. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken understanding. Here was a man who knew about loss, about the weight of carrying on alone. "The phone's in the kitchen," Sarah said, breaking the spell. "Help yourself." As David made calls to towing services and insurance companies, Sarah found herself drawn into conversation with Harold about his wife, about love, about the courage it took to open one's heart again. Marcus listened quietly, occasionally adding his own observations about second chances and the unexpected ways life could surprise you. "I lost my wife 5 years ago," Marcus said suddenly, his voice barely audible above the rain. "Cancer. We were supposed to grow old together, travel the world, maybe finally get that dog she always wanted." He paused, running a hand through his damp hair. "I haven't been able to imagine a future since then. Until ... He didn't finish the sentence, but his eyes found Sarah's again, and she felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. "The tow truck can't make it out until morning," David announced, returning from the kitchen. "The roads are too dangerous." Sarah's heart began to race. 3 strangers, spending the night in her home. But as she looked at Harold's grandfatherly face, David's gentle demeanor, and Marcus's quiet strength, her fear transformed into something else entirely. Anticipation, perhaps, or hope. "There's a guest room upstairs," she heard herself saying, "and a pull-out couch in the living room. It's not much, but it's warm and dry." "We couldn't impose," Marcus began, but Sarah cut him off. "You're not imposing. I haven't had company in a long time. It might be nice." The evening unfolded like a dream. Harold regaled them with stories of his travels with his beloved wife, painting pictures of Parisian cafes and moonlit beaches in Venice. David shared his passion for photography, showing them pictures on his phone of sunsets and cityscapes that took Sarah's breath away. And Marcus spoke about his work as a carpenter, about the satisfaction of building something beautiful with his hands. "I used to love creating things," Sarah admitted as they sat around her fireplace, the flames casting dancing shadows on their faces. "I painted, once upon a time. But after James left, I just ... stopped." "Why?" Marcus asked gently. "Because he said I wasn't good enough, that I was wasting my time on foolish dreams." The words came out in a rush, surprising her with their honesty. "May I see some of your work?" Harold asked. Sarah hesitated, then disappeared upstairs. She returned with a small canvas painting of the very cottage they sat in, surrounded by wildflowers and bathed in golden light. The men fell silent, studying the brushstrokes and the way she had captured not just the image, but the feeling of home. "This is extraordinary," David whispered. "You have a gift." "Had," Sarah corrected. "I haven't painted in 2 years." Marcus stood and walked to where she sat, kneeling beside her chair. "One man's opinion doesn't define your worth," he said quietly. "I've built houses for people who couldn't appreciate the craftsmanship, but that doesn't make the work less valuable." Their faces were inches apart now, and Sarah could smell the rain on his skin, see the flecks of gold in his grey eyes. She had forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen by someone, to have her dreams validated instead of dismissed. "Sarah," he whispered, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. But before either of them could move closer, David cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Maybe we should get some rest. It's been a long day." The spell was broken, but not the connection. As they prepared makeshift sleeping arrangements, Sarah found herself hyper-aware of Marcus's presence. The way he insisted on taking the uncomfortable chair so Harold could have the pull-out couch. The way he helped her gather extra blankets without being asked. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. "Good night, Sarah," he said as she prepared to go upstairs. "Thank you for everything." "Good night," she replied, but sleep was the furthest thing from her mind. Sarah lay in her bed, listening to the rain and the soft murmur of voices from below. She thought about Harold's words, that love doesn't follow timelines. She thought about Marcus's gentle touch when he'd moved a strand of hair from her face. She thought about the way David had looked at her paintings with such genuine appreciation. These 3 men had appeared in her life like characters from a story. each bringing something she hadn't realized she needed. Harold's wisdom, David's encouragement, and Marcus's quiet strength. They had reminded her that she was more than her past heartbreak, more than the cruel words of a man who couldn't recognize her worth. But as dawn approached and the rain began to soften, Sarah knew. They would leave. The tow truck would come, they would thank her politely, and she would be alone again. The thought filled her with a desperate sadness she hadn't felt in years. She was pulled from her thoughts by the sound of footsteps on the stairs. Soft, careful. Steps that paused outside her door. A gentle knock. "Sarah? Are you awake?" Marcus's voice, low and uncertain. She opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, his hair mussed from sleep, wearing the spare shirt she'd given him. In the dim light, he looked younger, more vulnerable. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "I keep thinking about what you said earlier. About stopping painting because of what that man told you." "Marcus, it's late." "I know, but I need to say this." He stepped closer, and she could see the intensity in his eyes. "I spent 5 years believing that love was something that happened once in a lifetime. That I had my chance and lost it. That tonight, sitting by your fire, watching you come alive, when you talked about your art, I realized I was wrong." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. "Marcus, I know we just met. I know this is crazy, but I haven't felt this way since." He paused, searching for words. "Since before my world went dark. You brought light back into it, Sarah. In one evening, you reminded me what it feels like to hope again." Tears gathered in her eyes. "I don't know how to trust again," she whispered. "I don't know how to take that risk." "Then don't," he said simply. "Don't trust the situation or the timing or the fact that we're practically strangers. Trust this." He placed his hand over his heart. "Trust what you feel when you look at me. Trust the way you smiled when Harold talked about his wife. Trust the way you lit up when David praised your painting." Sarah looked into his eyes and saw everything she had been too afraid to hope for. Not just romance, but understanding. Not just attraction, but genuine connection. The kind of love that saw through walls and wounds to the person beneath. "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I," he said, reaching out to cup her face in his hands. "But I'm more scared of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been." The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid the other might disappear. But as Sarah melted into his embrace, as she felt the solid warmth of him against her, something broke open inside her chest. All the loneliness, all the fear, all the carefully guarded hopes came spilling out. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "The tow truck will be here soon," Marcus said, his forehead resting against hers. "I know. I don't want to leave. I know. Come with me." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and tempting. Sarah thought about her quiet cottage, her predictable routines, her safe, small life. Then she thought about the painting upstairs, about the dreams she'd abandoned, about the way Marcus's eyes had made her feel like she was worth something. "Precious, I can't just leave everything," she said. But even as she spoke, she was imagining it. A new city, a new start, a chance to paint again. "Then I'll stay," Marcus said without hesitation. "I'll find work here. I'll court you properly, the way you deserve. I'll prove that not all men are like the one who hurt you." "Marcus, you don't understand. I'm not just damaged goods from a bad relationship. I'm afraid of everything. I haven't taken a real risk in years." "Then we'll take small ones," he said, kissing her forehead. "Day by day, step by step. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. Not unless you tell me to." The sound of a truck engine in the distance made them both freeze. Reality was intruding on their fragile moment. bringing with it all the complications and impossibilities they had been ignoring. "That's the tow truck," Marcus said, his voice heavy with regret. They dressed quickly and went downstairs to find Harold and David already awake, gathering their few belongings. Harold took one look at Sarah and Marcus and smiled knowingly. "Sometimes the best things happen when we least expect them," he said quietly to Sarah. "My wife and I met during a thunderstorm too. I was a traveling salesman. She was a librarian, who let me wait out the rain in her library. Changed both our lives." David nodded enthusiastically. "Love stories always have the best beginnings." This would make an incredible photo series. The night that changed everything. As the men prepared to leave, Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. This couldn't be it. This couldn't be the end of a story that had barely begun. "Wait!" she called out as Marcus reached for the door handle. I don't even know your last name, or where you live, or what your favorite color is." Marcus turned back, his eyes soft with understanding. "Thompson. Marcus Thompson. I live in Cedar Falls, about 3 hours from here. And my favorite color is the exact shade of green your eyes turn when you're thinking about painting." Despite everything, Sarah laughed. "That's impossibly specific. I'm an impossibly specific kind of man," he said with a grin that made her heart flutter. He pulled a business card from his wallet and wrote something on the back. "My number. Call me when you're ready to take that first small risk, even if it's just coffee." "What if I'm never ready?" she asked, voicing her deepest fear. "Then I'll wait," he said simply. "But Sarah, I don't think you're as broken as you believe. I think you're just someone who loved deeply and got hurt badly. That doesn't make you damaged. It makes you human." The tow truck driver honked impatiently, and the moment of parting could no longer be delayed. Harold gave Sarah a grandfatherly hug, whispering words of encouragement. David promised to send her some photography tips to help her see her art in new ways. And Marcus kissed her one more time, soft and full of promise. "Thank you," he said against her lips, "for opening your door, for letting us in, for showing me that it's possible to feel alive again." "Thank you," she replied, "for reminding me who I used to be." As they walked to the tow truck, Sarah stood in her doorway, watching the 3 men who had changed her life in the span of a single night. The rain had stopped, and the first rays of sunlight were breaking through the clouds, painting the world in shades of gold and hope. Marcus looked back once, his eyes finding hers across the distance. He raised his hand in a wave, and Sarah found herself waving back, a smile spreading across her face despite the tears on her cheeks. After they left, Sarah climbed the stairs to her bedroom and pulled out the painting she had shown them. Studied it with new eyes, seeing not the amateur work of a foolish dreamer, but the skilled expression of someone who understood beauty and could capture it on canvas. She set up her easel for the first time in 2 years. As she mixed colors on her palette, Sarah thought about the choice that lay before her. She could return to her safe, predictable life, treasuring the memory of one magical night. Or she could take Marcus's advice and start with small risks. A phone call, a coffee date, a willingness to believe that love could find her again, even when she wasn't looking for it. The painting that emerged was unlike anything she had created before. It showed 3 figures walking through the rain toward a house glowing with warm light. But it was more than just a scene. It was a feeling. The feeling of hope being reborn, of walls coming down, of a woman learning to trust again. When she finished, hours later, Sarah picked up Marcus's business card. His number was written in careful, masculine handwriting. On the back, he had written, "For the woman who paints light into darkness, thank you for doing the same for my heart." Sarah smiled, picked up her phone and dialed. "Hello?" His voice was warm, hopeful. Marcus? It's Sarah. I was wondering, would you like to have coffee sometime? I think I'm ready for that first small risk. The joy in his voice was unmistakable. I thought you'd never ask. As they talked, making plans for the following weekend, Sarah gazed out her window at the world washed clean by rain. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. It was the kind of sunset that demanded to be painted, the kind of moment that reminded her why she had fallen in love with art in the first place. Marcus? She said suddenly. Yeah? What's your favorite time of day? He was quiet for a moment. I used to say sunset because it reminded me of endings. But now, I think I prefer sunrise. New beginnings and all that. Sarah laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. I'm looking at the most beautiful sunset right now. I think I'm going to paint it. I can't wait to see it, he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice dot as they talked about art and dreams and the courage it took to start over. Sarah realized that sometimes the most important doors we open aren't the ones that lead into our homes, but the ones that lead into our hearts. 3 men had knocked on her door during a storm, but only one had found the key to everything she had kept locked away. The night that had started with fear and uncertainty had become the first chapter of a love story she never could have imagined. And as Sarah began planning her next painting, one that would capture not just the beauty of a sunset, but the hope of a new dawn, she knew that the best stories were just beginning. Outside, the world sparkled with raindrops like diamonds. And somewhere in the distance, a man named Marcus Thompson was probably watching the same sunset, thinking about the woman who had reminded him how to hope again. It was, Sarah thought as she mixed colors on her palette, exactly the kind of beginning that her grandmother would have approved of. Trust your heart, child, but use your head. She had done both, and for the first time in years, the future looked bright with possibility.